The horse shouldn't have been there. That was the first wrong thing Cole Bridger noticed when he rode into the valley that afternoon, a chestnut mare standing alone in the tall grass beside a weathered fence, her head turned toward the road as if she'd been waiting, not grazing, not wandering, just standing there, still as stone, watching him approach. The second wrong thing was the way she moved when he slowed his gelding to a walk. She took 3 deliberate steps forward, stopped, and then soft, clear, unmistakable she whinnied. Not a general call, not a greeting to another horse. It sounded like a word. Cole pulled his hat lower and kept riding. He'd been 3 weeks on the trail from Kansas, chasing work that didn't exist and avoiding towns where his name still carried weight. He wasn't in the mood for strange horses or the superstitions that came with them. But when he passed the mare, she turned her head and followed him with her eyes. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. He told himself it was the wind. The cabin sat another quarter-mile up the road, small, stone-built, with a shingled roof that had seen better years. Smoke curled thin from the chimney. A vegetable garden stretched along the southern side, neat rows of squash and beans tied to crooked stakes. Laundry hung on a line, 2 dresses, a blanket, a child's shirt. Cole dismounted near the porch and tied his gelding to the post. The door opened before he could knock. The woman who stepped out was younger than he expected, maybe 30, though her eyes looked older. Dark hair pulled back in a braid, worn hands, a rifle resting easy against her shoulder, not aimed, but present. "You lost?" she asked. "No, ma'am, just passing through. Saw your fence could use mending, and thought I'd offer a day's work for a hot meal." She studied him with the kind of silence that came from living alone too long. Then she glanced past him, toward the road. "That horse follow you in?" Cole turned. The chestnut mare stood at the edge of the property now, just beyond the fence line, her ears forward. "She was in the field when I rode past," he said carefully. "Don't know who she belongs to." The woman's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, a tightness in her shoulders, a flicker of something that might have been grief or fear or both. "She belongs to no one," the woman said quietly. "Not anymore." Cole waited. The woman lowered the rifle and leaned it against the doorframe. "My name's Eliza Farrow. You can mend the fence if you want. Supper's at sundown." She turned to go inside, then paused. "And don't go near that horse." "Why not?" Eliza looked back at him, and for the first time, he saw the exhaustion beneath her calm. "Because she knows things she shouldn't." Cole worked the fence line for the rest of the afternoon, replacing rotted posts and tightening wire. The work was good, steady, quiet, the kind that let a man's mind settle. But every time he glanced toward the road, the mare was there, watching. She never came closer, never grazed, just stood in the same spot, her dark eyes fixed on the cabin. When the sun dipped low and the air turned amber, Eliza stepped onto the porch and called him in. Cole washed his hands at the pump and followed her inside. The cabin was small but orderly. A table set for 2, a pot of stew on the stove, a child's drawing pinned to the wall, a house, a tree, a stick figure holding the reins of a horse. Eliza ladled stew into bowls and set one in front of him. They ate in silence for a while, the only sound the scrape of spoons and the crackle of the fire. Finally, Cole spoke. "You said the horse knows things." Eliza set her spoon down slowly. She didn't look at him. "My husband bought her 2 years ago," she said, "from a trader passing through. She was young then, gentle. He named her June, after his mother." She paused. "He died last winter. Fever took him in 3 days." "I'm sorry." Eliza nodded, but her gaze stayed distant. "After he passed, June wouldn't let anyone near her. Not me, not the boy from town who tried to buy her. She just left, wandered off into the valley. I thought she was gone for good, but she came back." "She did," Eliza's voice dropped. 3 months ago. She stood right where you saw her today, and when I walked out to the road, she hesitated, her hands tightening around the edge of the table. She said his name. Cole went still. "I know how that sounds," Eliza continued, her voice steady but strained. "But I heard it, clear as I hear you now." She looked right at me and said, "Thomas." The fire popped. Somewhere outside, a coyote called. "Maybe it was the wind," Cole offered quietly. Or, "It wasn't the wind." Eliza finally looked at him, and her eyes were raw. "I've heard her say it 6 times since then, always at dusk, always when I'm alone, and every time." She stopped, swallowing hard. "Every time, I feel like he's trying to tell me something." Cole didn't know what to say to that. He'd seen strange things in his years, men who walked away from bullets that should have killed them, storms that turned on a breath, animals that moved like they carried ghosts. But a horse that spoke a dead man's name? That was something else. "You think I'm losing my mind?" Eliza said softly. No, ma'am. I think you've been through something no one should have to carry alone. She looked at him for a long moment, and something in her expression cracked just slightly relief. Maybe, or just the weight of being believed. Even a little. Stay the night, she said. There's a shed out back. It's dry. I'll take you up on that. Eliza nodded and rose to clear the table. Cole helped her, and as he set his bowl in the basin, he glanced out the window. The mare was still there, and this time, in the fading light, he could have sworn she was looking right at him. Cole woke before dawn to the sound of hoofbeats. Not his gelding, those were tied and quiet. These were slower, deliberate, circling. He pulled on his boots and stepped out of the shed into the cold grey light. The mare stood 20 feet away, her breath misting in the early air. She wasn't agitated, wasn't spooked. She was just there, waiting. Cole approached slowly, hands low and open. Easy, girl. The mare didn't move. Her eyes tracked him, calm, intelligent, unsettling in their focus. He stopped a few feet away. You got something to say? For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind through the grass, and then soft, low, unmistakable, the mare exhaled a sound that carried shape. Thomas. Cole froze. It wasn't a whinny. It wasn't a trick of the wind or his imagination filling in gaps. It was a voice rough, breathy, but clear. His heart hammered in his chest. The mare took one step closer. Her ears flicked forward, and then, quieter, she made another sound. Help. Cole stumbled back, his pulse roaring in his ears. The mare didn't follow. She just stood there, watching him with those two knowing eyes. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Eliza stood on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, her face pale. You heard it. Cole turned to her, his voice rough. Yeah, I heard it. She descended the steps slowly, her gaze locked on the mare. What did she say? She said his name. And then, he swallowed. She said help. Eliza stopped halfway across the yard. Her expression was unreadable, fear and grief, and something else tangled together. I told you, she whispered. I told you she knows. But how? Cole's voice cracked with frustration. How does a horse? I don't know. Eliza's eyes shone in the early light. But I think Thomas is trying to reach me. Through her. I think he needs something, and I don't know what it is. And her voice broke. I don't know how to help him. Cole dragged a hand down his face. Every instinct told him to saddle up and ride. This wasn't his burden, wasn't his grief. He'd learned long ago not to get tangled in other people's ghosts. But when he looked at Eliza, at the exhaustion carved into her features, the desperate hope she was trying not to show, he knew he wasn't going anywhere. All right, he said quietly. Let's figure this out. They spent the morning searching the property. Cole checked the barn, the tool shed, the root cellar, anywhere Thomas might have kept something important, something unfinished. Eliza went through the cabin, letters, journals, anything that might hold a clue. The mare followed them, not close, but always within sight, her presence a constant weight. By midday, they'd found nothing. Eliza sat on the porch steps, her face drawn. Maybe I'm just hearing what I want to hear. Maybe it's grief, and I'm dragging you into... It's not grief, Cole said firmly. He sat beside her, his hat in his hands. I heard it too, clear as day. That means something. But what? Cole didn't have an answer. The mare stood at the edge of the yard, her head low, almost... waiting. Where did Thomas go before he got sick? Cole asked suddenly. Eliza frowned. Into town. He was buying supplies for winter, came back soaked through from a storm. 2 days later, the fever started. Did he say anything? Act strange? No. He was quiet. But Thomas was always quiet. She paused. Though, he did ask me something the night before he took ill. What? Eliza's voice softened. He asked if I'd ever forgive him. Cole looked at her. For what? I don't know. I thought he was just worried about the winter, about money. We'd had a hard season. Her eyes filled. I told him there was nothing to forgive. And then, he got sick. And I never... Her voice broke off. Cole sat with that for a moment, the pieces shifting in his mind. He was carrying something he didn't want to tell you. But what? Before Cole could answer, the mare lifted her head and whinnied sharp. Urgent. Both of them turned. A rider was coming up the valley road, moving fast. The man who dismounted in front of the cabin was tall, weathered, with a badge pinned to his vest. His eyes swept the property with the practiced efficiency of someone used to looking for trouble. Mrs. Farrow, he said, tipping his hat. Name's Deputy Wyatt Kane. I'm sorry to intrude. Eliza stood, her posture stiff. What brings you out here, Deputy? Kane's gaze flicked to Cole, then back to Eliza. I'm looking into some old business. There was a stagecoach robbery last winter just outside of town. Driver was killed. Money was never recovered. Eliza's face went pale. We've been following leads, Kane continued. And your husband's name came up. The words landed like stones. That's a lie, Eliza said, her voice shaking. Thomas would never. I'm not here to accuse anyone, ma'am. I'm just asking questions. Kane's tone was measured, but his eyes were hard. Did your husband come into any money last winter? Anything unusual? No. Did he act different? Say anything strange? Eliza's hands clenched into fists. He was a good man. He worked hard. He loved his family. Whatever you think he did, I'm just following the trail, Mrs. Farrow. Kane looked past her, toward the barn. Mind if I take a look around? Yes, I mind. Kane's expression didn't change. Then I'll come back with a warrant. He mounted his horse and tipped his hat again. Good day, ma'am. As he rode off, Eliza sank onto the steps, her face in her hands. Cole stood beside her, his jaw tight. The mare watched them both. And in the silence, Cole heard it again, faint, mournful, undeniable. Help. They waited until the deputy's silhouette disappeared over the ridge before either of them spoke. Eliza's voice came out flat, hollow. He thinks Thomas stole that money. Maybe. Cole crouched in front of her, his tone careful. Or maybe someone wants people to think he did. She looked up at him, eyes red-rimmed. Why would anyone? Because dead men make easy scapegoats. The words hung heavy between them. Eliza stared past him, toward the place where the mare still stood, unmoving. If they come back with a warrant? If they search this place and find something? She shook her head. I don't even know what they'd be looking for. Thomas didn't steal anything. He couldn't have. But he asked for forgiveness. Eliza flinched. Cole pressed gently. If he was hiding something, if he was trying to protect you, he might have buried it, hidden it somewhere you wouldn't find. Then where? Cole stood and looked around the property. The barn, the shed, the fence line stretching into the valley. Too many places, too much ground. And then his eyes landed on the mare. She was walking now slow, purposeful, heading toward the far edge of the property, where the land sloped down into a stand of cottonwoods. She's moving, Cole said. Eliza followed his gaze. She does that sometimes, wanders off into the trees. Has she ever come back from there carrying something? No, she just stands there, like she's waiting. Cole grabbed his hat. Let's follow her. The mare led them down the slope, through tall grass that whispered against their legs. The cottonwoods rose ahead, their pale trunks glowing in the afternoon light. The air smelled of water and earth. The mare stopped at the edge of a dry creek bed, her head lowered toward a cluster of rocks half buried in the dirt. Cole knelt and started moving stones. Eliza crouched beside him, her hands shaking as she helped. 3 feet down, his fingers hit something solid. Leather. He pulled it free, a saddlebag, old and weathered, the strap stained dark with mud. He opened it carefully. Inside were bundles of bills, a lot of them. Eliza gasped and sat back on her heels, her face white. No, 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 no. Cole kept digging. Beneath the money was a folded piece of paper. He opened it. The handwriting was rough, hurried. Eliza, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you found what I couldn't bear to tell you. The stagecoach was already hit when I came across it. The driver was dead. The money was just there. I took it. I told myself it was for you, for us, for the winter. But it was wrong. I know that now. I tried to return it, but I didn't know how without hanging for something I didn't do. So I buried it. I thought maybe someday I'd find the courage. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Forgive me, Thomas. Eliza's breath came in short, broken gasps. She covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Cole folded the letter and handed it to her. He didn't kill anyone. He just made a bad choice when he was desperate. But they'll think, her voice cracked. If the deputy finds this, they'll say Thomas was the robber. They'll take everything. They won't find it. Eliza looked at him, her eyes wild. What? Cole stood and hefted the saddlebag. We're going to return it. Tonight, before Kane comes back. To who? The stage company. Anonymously. Leave it where it'll be found. No questions asked. And if we're caught? Then we're caught. But at least Thomas's name stays clean. Eliza stared at him for a long moment, tears still wet on her cheeks. Then she nodded, once, fierce. All right. They rode out just after sunset, Cole on his gelding, Eliza on a borrowed mule, the saddlebag secured between them. The mare followed at a distance, her pale shape moving like a ghost through the twilight. The town was 6 miles south, a scattered collection of buildings clustered around a rail depot. The stage company office sat on the main road, dark and locked. Cole dismounted and circled the building. A window around back sat just high enough to be out of casual reach. He pried it open with his knife and slipped the saddlebag through, letting it drop onto the floor inside. He was halfway back to the horses when he heard the voice. "Hold it right there." Cole froze. Deputy Kane stepped out from the shadows near the corner of the building, his revolver drawn but not aimed. "Thought I might find you here." Eliza's face went pale. "We were just returning stolen money?" Kane's voice was calm, almost amused. "I know. I followed you from the property." Cole's hand drifted toward his belt. "Then you know Thomas Farrow didn't rob that stage." "I know he took the money. That's enough. He found it after the robbery. The real killer's still out there." "Maybe." Kane's eyes were cold. "But all anyone's going to see is a dead man's widow sneaking around at night with a bag full of cash. How do you think that'll play?" Eliza took a step forward. "Please. I just want this to be over." Kane studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he holstered his gun. "Go home, Mrs. Farrow. I'll report that the money was recovered. No names attached." Eliza's breath hitched. You'd do that?" "I'm not interested in punishing grief." Kane's gaze shifted to Cole. "But if I see either of you in town again before this blows over, I'll have no choice." Cole nodded once. "Understood." Kane tipped his hat and stepped back into the shadows. Eliza sagged against the mule, shaking. Cole helped her mount, and they rode back toward the valley in silence. The mare was waiting for them at the edge of the property, and this time, when Cole looked at her, she didn't speak. She just lowered her head, as if the weight she'd been carrying was finally gone. They didn't speak much on the ride back. The night was cool and clear, the stars scattered like salt across the sky. The mare walked beside them now, no longer trailing at a distance, just there, steady and quiet, her presence no longer heavy with urgency. When they reached the cabin, Eliza dismounted and stood for a long moment with her hand on the mule's neck, her head bowed. Cole unsaddled the horses in silence, giving her space. Finally she spoke. "I don't know if I should thank you or apologize." Cole glanced over. "For what?" "For dragging you into this." "For?" She gestured vaguely toward the valley, the town, the night. "All of it." "You didn't drag me anywhere. I stayed because I wanted to." Eliza looked at him, her expression raw. "Why?" Cole paused, his hands still on the saddle. "Because I know what it's like to carry something alone, and I know what it costs." She held his gaze for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Come inside. I'll make coffee." The cabin was warm, the fire banked low. Eliza poured 2 cups and set them on the table. They sat across from each other, the silence comfortable now, the kind that came after a storm had passed. "I loved him," Eliza said quietly. "Thomas. I loved him even when things were hard, even when the money ran out and the winter felt like it'd never end. He was a good man. He just made a mistake. We all do, but his mistake could have ruined us, could have taken this place, my name, everything, but it didn't." Cole leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Because you fought for him, even after he was gone. That's not nothing." Eliza's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I kept hearing him, in the wind, in the quiet. I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe you were just listening." She laughed, soft and broken. To a horse, to whatever was left of him that needed to be heard. Eliza wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. "Do you believe in that? In ghosts? Or spirits? Or whatever this was?" Cole considered. "I believe some things don't let go easy. Love, guilt, unfinished business. Maybe Thomas couldn't rest until he knew you'd be all right. And maybe that mare," he glanced toward the window, where the chestnut stood near the fence, grazing now. "Maybe she was the only way he could reach you." Eliza followed his gaze. She was his favorite. He used to talk to her like she understood every word. Maybe she did. They sat in silence for a while, sipping coffee, the fire crackling softly. Finally, Eliza spoke again. "What will you do now?" "Move on, I guess. Find work somewhere. Keep riding." "You don't have to." Cole looked at her. Eliza hesitated, her hands wrapped around her cup. "There's work here. The fence, the barn roof, a dozen other things I can't manage alone. I can't pay much, but you'd have a place to stay. Food. Quiet." Cole studied her, this woman who'd survived loss and suspicion and fear, who'd stood in front of a deputy with her chin up and her hands steady, who'd risked everything to protect the memory of a man who'd made one terrible choice out of love. "I'll stay through the winter," he said. "Help you get the place ready. After that, we'll see." Relief flickered across Eliza's face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I'm a terrible cook." She smiled small, but real. I'll manage. The next morning, Cole woke to find the mare standing outside the shed, her head low, her eyes calm. He walked over slowly and placed a hand on her neck. She didn't speak, didn't pull away, just stood there, warm and solid and real. You did good, Cole murmured. He'd be proud. The mare exhaled softly and turned her head toward the cabin, where Eliza was stepping onto the porch with a basket of laundry. She saw them and paused, a smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in months, the valley felt like it could breathe again. The winter came slow that year. Cole stayed through the first snow, then the second. He mended the barn roof, reinforced the fence, split enough firewood to last until spring. Eliza cooked, mended, kept the cabin warm. They worked in the kind of rhythm that didn't need words, passing tools, sharing meals, sitting by the fire in the evenings while the wind howled outside. The mare June stayed close. She grazed near the cabin, wandered the valley during the day, and returned every night to stand by the fence as if keeping watch. She never spoke again, but sometimes, in the early morning light, Cole would see Eliza standing at the window, her hand pressed to the glass, watching the mare with an expression that was equal parts grief and peace. Deputy Kane rode out once more in late December. He dismounted slowly, his breath misting in the cold air, and handed Eliza an envelope. Stagecoach Company recovered the missing funds, he said. Cases closed. No charges filed. Eliza took the envelope, her hands trembling. And Thomas? His name's clear. Far as anyone's concerned, he was never involved. Her eyes filled, but she nodded, her voice steady. Thank you. Kane glanced at Cole, who stood near the barn, arms crossed. You planning to stay? Through the winter. Good. She could use the help. Kane tipped his hat and mounted his horse. Take care of each other. He rode off, and Eliza opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from the stage company, a formal notice of closure, along with a small reward for the return of the funds. $50. Eliza stared at it, then laughed, soft and disbelieving. He tried to give me everything, and in the end, he still did. Cole stepped beside her. He loved you. That's what mattered. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her pocket. I know. Spring came with wildflowers and green grass and the sound of birdsong in the cottonwoods. Cole repaired the plough, tilled the garden, helped Eliza plant rows of corn and beans. The work was hard, but it was good. One afternoon, as they rested on the porch, Eliza asked, Will you stay? After winter? Cole looked out across the valley, the wide sky, the rolling hills, the chestnut mare grazing in the sun. Yeah, he said. I think I will. Eliza smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it reached her eyes. Years later, when travelers passed through the valley, they'd sometimes stop at the little stone cabin to water their horses and ask for directions. Eliza would greet them with a kind smile and a cup of cold water. Cole would nod from the barn, his hat pulled low, his hands steady with work, and if the travelers looked closely, they'd see the chestnut mare grazing near the fence, older now, her muzzle flecked with grey, but still strong. Some said she was the smartest horse in 3 counties. Others said she was more than that. But no one who stopped at the Faro cabin ever left without feeling like they'd witnessed something quietly sacred, a place where love had spoken across the veil, where forgiveness had been earned, and where 2 people had learned to build a life from the pieces of grief and grace. The mare never spoke again, but every now and then, when the wind moved through the valley just right, Eliza would step onto the porch and listen, and she'd swear just for a moment she could hear Thomas whispering, You're going to be all right, and she was.